Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We have a special guest in the building. She's back.
Yes.
Miss Shanti Das.
Hey.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Silence to Shame.
Yes. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, but Silence to Shame actually has their own day.
Mm-hmm.
What was this, 7th?
It's May 5th.
5th.
May
Same
5th.
day as
Okay.
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo.
But you know, before you take your shot, we need y'all to silence the shame.
There you go. Let's talk about Silence to Shame. What is that day? What does it mean to you? And how can people help celebrate, support?
Yeah, so Silence the Shame Day is an opportunity for everybody nationwide to talk about mental health awareness. The organization started in 2016. And in 2017, I just came up with this idea. I was like, let me just create a little graphic and see if my friends will post. 90 million impressions later.
Wow.
In one day. So we had people from like Candy Burris, Big Boy, a lot of my peeps in the A posting. And so after we got all of that recognition, I was like, maybe we should turn this into a real day. So we applied to the National Day Register. You know how you got like National Pizza Day,
Right.
National Popcorn Day, and they accepted us.
Wow.
So last year in 2018, it became official. So
Congrats.
That's right. You were here last year, right?
yeah, exactly. Promoting it last year. And what we did was we utilized the opportunity for having that type of exposure to raise funds for our organization. Because we're still like a little small foundation, even though I think we do really major work compared to a lot of other advocacy organizations that are just starting out. And so we did a text-a-thon. And we're doing the same thing this year, but on the 4th. So it's kind of like a kickoff. You can either post
Gotcha.
and donate on May 4th or May 5th. And we're going to utilize the funding for all of our programs. And I brought y'all our 2018 year-end review just so you could kind of see what we've been able to do just in a year.
Right.
And I did thank the Breakfast Club and all of you guys. But we do community conversations. We've done like team mental health tours throughout the country. We partnered with Music Cares to do panels around music and mental health, which we should talk about because we just did one in New York
That was great.
the other night. Thank you for being on.
Thank you
It's
for
an honor
having me.
to have you. We shoot content. You know, we have a podcast that's on Google Play, SoundCloud, and we talk about everything from borderline personality disorder. We have one on using pets as therapy. We have one on college depression, and we even did one on grief and loss, which, you know, this has been, I'm going to try to get through this interview, but my sister passed away 2 weeks ago. And she was a big reason why I started Silence to Shame. Because when I was going through my own suicidal ideation, she's the one that convinced me to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-TALK. And then when my dad took his own life, you know, she was 8 years old, and she pretty much put aside her childhood to raise us. And so she had always told me throughout my life, you need to go to counseling. You need to go to counseling to get over your dad's death. And, you know, working in the industry, you know, you get a little bit of an ego too as an executive, and I'm marketing all these major artists. I thought I didn't need anybody to help me through it, right? And once I got to be an adult and started dealing with it, I knew how bad I needed this. And this movement has just become that much more important to me. And we've had other people in our family that suffer from mental health challenges. And my sister is was one of the strongest people I know. And she had just graduated in December, and she had gotten her master's in counseling to become a therapist. So to have this be right around Silence to Shame Day, I mean, you know, your time is your time. I think we're all on borrowed time, right? When it's your time, you have to be okay with it and accept it. But it makes mental health awareness that much more important for me, and I'm going to go even harder, if there is such a thing, you know, to do this in remembrance of my sister, Anjali Maria Arnold.
Rest in peace. Are you happy that the conversation of mental health is now part of the mainstream media?
I am
and
so
pop
happy
culture?
because I think, you know, even for me, like not even being able to recognize my signs when I was going through my challenges working in the entertainment industry, I didn't know what to call depression. I recognize the signs and symptoms in myself now, but the fact that you see people on television, you see athletes, like whether it's Kevin Love or DeMar DeRozan, you know, talking about it, it's huge. And you talking about it every day. I mean, I know we joked about this last year, but excuse me, we've come such a long way, even just in a year. And, you know, I've spoken for organizations like the NBA. I've done work at the NFL Players Association. And it seems like every company now wants to incorporate a wellness component. And
Yes.
they realize that, you know, their staff, their employees are stressed out. And people don't know how to handle that stress, and they don't have healthy coping mechanisms. And so now more than ever, whether you want to call it wellness, you want to call it mental wellness, brain health, brain wealth, mental health, whatever it is, we got to talk about it.
Let's talk about some of the resources that Silence the Shame does offer people, because we have this packet here that's telling us all the work that you've done in the past year. But let's let people know if they need to reach out and what it is that you can offer for anybody that might have questions or things that they're dealing with.
Absolutely. So one of the resources we offer is there's an organization called the Crisis Text Line Organization. And it's a national organization, and a lot of advocacy groups have their own keywords. So if you know somebody that's in crisis, they can text the word silence to 741-741. It's confidential. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can just text a counselor to be immediately connected to someone, and then they will place you with a therapist or clinician in your area, which is amazing. Also, I mentioned our podcast. A lot of people they need to hear other people's lived experiences, and that's what we take pride in with our podcast. And we interview everyday people, clinicians, but we also have interviews up like from Big Crit, from Michelle Williams. So sometimes, when people hear other celebrities talking about it, it'll make them want to get the support. Just a guy the other day just reached out to me and DM'd me, and he was like, "You don't know how much your podcasts have helped to save me."
Wow.
And that's why we're doing the work. Like, I don't want any praise. We don't want any accolades. We just want to help people that aren't really open, to sharing and to getting the help that they need.
And a lot of people want to get help for other people, but it's hard for that person, if they don't want to do it, for you to convince somebody to talk
absolutely.
to someone.
And also, that's why I think our community conversations are important. And we like to call them community conversations instead of panel discussions, because we want to have that exchange of dialogue. And like you said, a lot of times people don't know how to help the other person. But sometimes if you're sitting in that room and you can hear that dialogue, or you can hear the story of how you wanted to go to therapy to help your family, and how you thought it was empowering for everybody in your family. Like, people need to hear other people opening up and sharing. And so for us to be able to do that is amazing. We also, if you go onto our website, silencetheshame.com, we have a list of resources. There's great organizations like NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. National Alliance on Mental Illness is national, so you can plug in your zip code and find therapists or group support, in any area. Also, Mental Health America is another great resource, and the Trevor Project, which helps out people in the LGBTQ community around emotional health and wellness. And we just got a $50,000 grant. Shout out to the AIDS Health Foundation, their affinity group. We're doing 5 community conversations around the country around the double stigma of HIV and mental health. So we're addressing that as well.
I love the conversation of mental health, and every time I'm out and about, I get a lot of teenagers that come up to me, high schoolers, and say that they love the conversation. They're going through a lot and they're dealing with it. My fear a little bit is kind of like with if a kid is acting up and all of a sudden they say he has ADHD,
right?
You know what I mean? Without necessarily knowing, they just use it as an excuse. Yeah. And that's my only fear sometimes with mental health, that if somebody does something, it's, well, I have mental health problems. Like I just in the first thing that comes up to my mind is the guy that killed Nipsey. They found him in a mental health hospital. Like, it almost was like that was going to be his excuse.
Well, he'd been in one before, though. He'd been in one a couple times before.
So
but I understand what you're saying.
That with that, does that make it an excuse to do some of the things that people are doing? You know what I mean?
I mean, I think that's a touchy subject, if you will, especially with teenagers, because at that age, your hormones are there. Kids may be acting out. They may just be, need a little discipline.
Right.
Or on the flip side of that, right, how do you know if your child isn't experiencing something and the suicidal ideation is real? Also, you can look at TV shows or scroll through the internet and you'll see kids say, maybe I should just kill myself, because it's kind of like a cool thing to say, right?
Absolutely.
So the reason why Silence the Shame exists is so we can educate parents and educate teens so that they know the difference. Because mental health is tricky. It's not like you can just go take a test and get some blood work, right, to determine it. It's based on behavioral patterns. So if your teen is acting up once or twice, maybe it's just them being a teen. But if you see this happening for a prolonged period of time, they're not wanting to get out of bed, they're withdrawing from activities like soccer or cheerleading or, football or basketball, that's when you got to say, hey, you know what, maybe they need to talk to somebody. So it's based on how long you see that person experiencing those signs and symptoms, and that's when it raises a red flag.
And you know what? When you even look at a situation like the Nipsey Hussle situation, you can clearly look at that guy who did that to Nipsey and something is wrong. Hurt people, and they just end up redistributing that pain to other individuals. For him to do what he did in that way, clearly something's wrong with him.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but my fear is that, and I'll be honest with you, that the court system will use that as an excuse, and instead of giving somebody who commits a crime like that and says, okay, we're going to put you in jail or whatever it may be, they'll say, okay, well, we'll put him in a mental hospital, let him see a psychiatrist, and then he's free in 3 years. Like, people will use that as an excuse. Like, that's what I feel, and that's what I see happening a lot. Like, something going wrong, people like, I have mental problems, it's mental issues. You know what I mean? Instead of digging down and really seeing what's hurting people and what the problem is.
I do think you cannot blame, every mass shooting or everything that happens on mental illness.
I feel like they do a lot.
And so that's why it's important to educate the community. One thing that we do offer, going back to your question, Angela, is we offer free mental health first aid training. You ever had CPR training? Anybody?
We tried to do it up here.
We had it up here with Dr. Oz.
Okay. It didn't go so well.
We did it on the dummy.
My dummy just definitely died.
Oh, no. Well, so it's very similar, but it's an 8-hour course that you can take. And it teaches you about the signs and symptoms, how to assess the situation or your loved one. It's just about teaching everybody. Even, we need to make sure that the judges and the people in the court systems, that they have mental health first aid training. I really think it should be mandatory for all teachers, so that they can understand, so that they can determine whether it's a kid acting out or if something is really wrong.
How long does that take? How long can you see how well somebody's mental health is? Because you give people a gun, and they run your prints, and they say come back in 4 hours. You can pick up a gun, but how long did that take? To see if somebody is mentally okay to own a gun.
Well, I can't really. I'm not.
I'm just talking about somebody's mental.
I mean, so the mental health first aid training, like I mentioned, is 8 hours, and so after that, they leave you with a handbook, and it's about looking at other resources and spending time with that person. You can see if there is a change in their behavior or if those symptoms match some of the symptoms for things like bipolar 1 disorder or schizophrenia or, schizoaffective disorder. And so when you take that class, it gives you kind of all of the tools that you need to be able to recognize it.
And it's not just about mental, too. It's social, emotional as well.
Oh, of course.
That's why they need to implement social and emotional learning in the schools. Like, some of these people they're hurt.
They are. And then the trauma. Think about the trauma that the kids are experiencing in the neighborhoods where you're seeing kids get shot right in front of you, or your uncle killed your grandmama, or your stepdad kills your mom. And these kids are going to experience PTSD, and that's why it's so important that a lot of our schools, I think, the resources don't meet the needs. A lot of the counselors aren't able to really treat the students, if you will. So you need to have them see an outside therapist in addition to just some of the school counselors. Oh, we just need more funding, too, in that area in the school system.
And we talk a lot about social media and how that affects kids. And I see Instagram is doing a little study where they're hiding the likes. So only you can see them and other people won't see them because people are doing a lot of things just to get likes, or they get depressed because they posted something and no one's liking it. So how many, as far as with the program, how many people are reaching out about their kids or kids reaching out themselves and having issues because of social media?
I find that happening a lot. One of my friend's kids, she did her own little video around depression, and she's a teenager. I think, one thing, let me just say, I'm glad that I didn't have that pressure.
Me too. I always
when I was growing up.
Lord have mercy.
And think about it.
We talked about that the other night. Like, imagine
even when I was really at
media.
my height in the music industry, like, I didn't want that pressure as an executive. I think kids now, they have so much pressure on themselves, and the fact that all they do is spend time on their highlight reel or on Snapchat. They've got to get to a place where they reconnect on a personal level. I think they're so connected that they're disconnected, and they're like obsessed with the likes. And although, I enjoy seeing people that like my posts, like, I'm not obsessed with it, but it's really difficult for kids to be able to break away from that and to differentiate from that. And I do think it's causing them to be stressed out more. That's leading to suicidal ideation and everything else. And they're acting out right on social media, right in front of our eyes. So much bullying.
I was talking to some teenage girls in high school, and I was talking to them about social media and how you don't have to respond to things, that are negative. And they were like, well, if somebody says something about my friend, I have to jump in and defend my friend, or else I'm not a good friend. And then it turns into a whole back and forth that just now so many people are jumping in, and now they have to go to school with each other. Now they don't like each other. Now this person's part of this clique. This person's not talking to this person, and it's like, how do you get people to stop?
So you know what we do because I also do a lot of just individual talks. I am a paid speaker, thank God, that I'm able to get out and share my story. But when I talk to teens and to young adults, even at colleges, I have this tour called the Loving You College Tour. So we talk a lot about self-love and do activities around self-care. I gave you guys a card that we put together about self-care. It's so important sometimes.
Oh, I love this, by the way.
Self-care is a big part of, it should be a big part of your daily regimen, whether you have mental health challenges or not. And some things on our list are write a not to-do list, go for a walk, Netflix and chill, take a nap, turn your phone off, create a gratitude list, unfollow negative people on social media. So to your point, we talk to these students and tell them, like, either unfollow them or just delete the comment. Like for me, I know if somebody's talking foul on my page, I just delete the comment. I block them immediately.
Me too.
I don't have the time.
I don't even play the game. No,
like, it's
block.
my page. I don't want negativity on my page. I want it to be all about Zen, Om Shanti Shanti. Like, don't bring that mess to my page. And so we tell these students to, like, you have to get to a point where you love yourself. And it's more about loving yourself. And I think if you truly can convince your children or your siblings or your peers to really care about what's inside and not worry about everybody else, then they won't be so stressed out about what everybody else is saying.
And social media is the worst place for a depressed person.
Oh, my gosh.
Because if you get online and you say something like, oh, I want to kill myself, and then you got 20 people saying, yeah, do it.
Well, especially at that age.
Yeah.
I'll say for me, being older, I was terrified to kind of open up and start sharing with my peers. I mean, even you guys, last year when I first shared with you guys, I thought about killing myself. We all kind of came up in the game together. Like, that was hard for me, but people were welcoming in our age group when I started sharing on social media, and it actually helped me. So there are ways that you can use social media to your benefit, even if you're going through something. But that's not in lieu of therapy. You need to be able to make sure you're talking to somebody objective who can help you get the help you need. And if you do need medication, don't be afraid of that.
What would you say to people who say, I'm not comfortable talking to a therapist because I don't know this person? They're a stranger. I don't trust them with all my information. What would you say to them?
What I would say is, what's the alternative? Are you just going to stay in that place and not get the help that you need? I also tell people that therapy sometimes is like dating. You got to swipe a couple times and keep trying it. Like, it took me like 3 or 4 times before I got comfortable with the right person. We talked about this in our panel the other night. Sometimes you need to find a therapist because it's based on cultural competency. And when therapists are trained, they're supposed to be sensitive to other issues within certain communities. Like, something may be different for someone in the Asian community. So if you are a black or white therapist, you have to be sensitive to those issues. And so for us, a lot of times I say, find someone that looks like you, and that might be a good first place to start, because they're going to understand where you're coming from and they can relate to things, or the plight of your community or things within your family that we tend to do. Like, for example, in the black community, oftentimes we're just told to pray your problems away. And I'm a Christian. I go to church. I'm a member of Ebenezer Baptist Church. I don't go every Sunday, but the point is, but my pastor, the night that I considered taking my own life, he was like, I'll pray with you, but you got to go to the doctor. You need to get some help. So we need people that can understand the sensibilities of even the black church and the black community. So start by finding someone that may look like you. There's a really great website called Therapy for Black Girls. And they have and it's not just for women. You can find therapists that will treat both men and women. But if you want someone that looks like you, there are resources and organizations out there. There's another organization called the Steve Fund that focuses on mental health for students at HBCUs. So it's just about getting the information out. Yeah.
That's interesting, because Charlamagne, you said you didn't want a therapist that was a black man or that looked like you.
And everybody's different, but I find that the majority of the people say that. But you want to share, because you had a really interesting perspective at the panel the other day.
Yeah, I said, I didn't want a black person because a lot of my issues that I am venting about are really about white people and whiteness and white supremacy. So I didn't want somebody just in there
to agree with me. And then we're both just sitting there angry. Like, I wanted somebody in there that was actually biased. I wanted an Asian woman. And sometimes,
I thought was going to be biased.
Like, no doctor is the same, or, a medical doctor, or your coach might be better than this coach. Same thing with therapy. You just got to keep trying till you find the best person that understands it, because everybody, is trained differently. And you got to keep trying till you find the right one.
Now, you think it's just important to talk to people? Because I know people who go to psychics, right, instead of therapists. And they might be having all kinds of issues. But I have a lot of people who I know who actually are like, I have a psychic that I go to. You need to go see my psychic. What do you think about that?
Hadn't really done much research in that space, but as long as you're kind of talking to someone, I don't know from a clinical perspective what kind of good advice psychics might give. I'm hoping that they still refer out, for therapy.
My homegirl's like, I feel so much better after I went to go see my psychic.
Yeah,
well, let me just say this.
Because the psychic is telling you all this good stuff that's going to happen to you.
Yeah. That's again. I know psychics are not trained from a mental health perspective, so I don't know what the best information they'll give you.
And says your life will be great. That's what you talking about?
No, it's like and I know people who call psychics and talk on the phone and like have real sessions.
Yeah,
and that's kind of like their therapy.
I spoke to a medium who's a psych. I spoke to a therapist / medium. That's you. So she's a therapist and she's a medium. I spoke to somebody.
What was that experience like?
It was cool. I mean, it was cool. I mean, it was cool.
Yeah, I've never done that.
Cool.
But let me just say this much.
I'm sorry.
So first of all, you just got to be able to talk to somebody, whether you're a child or an adult. I tell people, like, who's in your starting five? Like, who's in your starting five that you can call, like, whether it's your mom, your best friend,
who's in your five?
A coach. So it used to be my sister. She was number one on my list. And then my cousin Sandra, some of my best friends, and my staff members. So it's like I have 2 family members, 2 best friends, and my pastor. Those are the first people that I call right off.
Who's in your five?
But you got to have it.
Charlamagne, who's in your five?
My wife, my mom, Angela Rye. I don't know. I gotta see, because I got a whole host of spiritual advisors. So I can't count them as one. You know what I mean? So I might reach out to Carl Lynch. I might reach out to Pastor John Gray, Stephen Frederick. Like, I have a whole list of a bunch of pastors. So it's not just one. Maybe Minister Farrakhan.
A lot of people don't have a starting five.
Right.
Yeah.
I think for me, it depends on what it's about. Like, there's people I talk to when it comes to career things. There's people I talk to for relationship things. Definitely my boyfriend's always the first person I call about everything, though.
Oh, my boy Frosty.
Except if it's about him.
Your boyfriend what?
My boy Frosty.
Oh, your boy.
Shut up, man.
I
was like, damn, you call your boyfriend
that is my 5. When I got
and my best friend,
real pressing
Shanti. Not Shanti.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her name's Shanti.
Nice.
But I always call her about everything, and she lives in LA, and she's like very removed from stuff that happens in my everyday life.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's like a big deal, I always call her, and she'll always call me too.
Do we count the therapist in the 5 too?
If you want to, it's whoever. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I have a therapist that that is just kind of a friend of mine, and she doesn't treat me per se, but if I need something, she'll, be able to talk to me, and she's always like sending me encouraging posts and different things. So shout out to Dr. Adrian Berry.
And my girl Ingrid, I'll be like, Ingrid, we need to plan a trip, man. And that's what I always do. If I feel like things get overwhelming, we plan like a trip. Even if it's not happening too soon, it might be 3 months away. It just makes me feel better right away. Like, I had something to look forward to. We got a trip coming up in 3 months. Let me make it through.
And to your point, like, I never really thought this would be, my story right now, but people don't think about the importance of how grief and loss can affect your mental health. And it's so ironic, y'all. My sister was just on a podcast with me in January for Silence to Shame, and we talked about grief and loss. I was like, wow, she was setting me up. Not that she knew she was sick or anything, but, I hadn't brought myself to listen to it. I'm going to go back and listen to it this week. But, we've had so much loss lately in our community, whether it was Nipsey and, rest in peace to John Singleton. And a lot of people are grieving and they're not getting the help that they need, and they're internalizing that stress. Even, watching, shout out, to Puff and all his kids, with the loss of Kim Porter. You gotta go to grief counseling, y'all.
Right.
You cannot do this on your own. Nothing is wrong with it. And we all grieve in different ways. Like no one person grieves the same way. And I think I heard Lauren London say on the service for Nipsey is, grief is the final act of love. So it's okay if you cry. Like all throughout this trip being in New York, I was like, how am I gonna make it and do all these interviews? But the work is important. But I just found myself like crying for like 3 minutes in a restaurant, and then I'm okay.
Right.
But I didn't care because it felt like the world had stopped, and I saw people's lips moving, but it was like I was almost trapped in time. And so I just want people to understand that there are different stages to grief, and there's help for that too, because if you don't get yourself help and you allow yourself to internalize all that stress, it could eventually lead to depression. It could eventually lead to a psychotic break or to even suicidal ideation. So if you're experiencing a loss, make sure you get help and get the children help. There are some wonderful organizations that help children who's lost, parents or loved ones. Like in Atlanta, there's this group called Kate's Club, and they just do some really great work about coping and learning how to deal without your loved one being in your life. But that can really, really trigger your depression, and that's what made me afraid, because I was like, I don't want to slip back into the space that I was in 2015. So guess what? Monday, I got my appointment, and I'm starting therapy all over again because I got to keep this work going.
Gotta be proactive.
Yeah, I think about that when I see people on social media, like, and they'll do Instagram posts day after day of somebody who passed away, and I'm like, they need to go see.
They're
a grief counselor.
hurting.
Yeah,
they're just using, and it's good that they're being open somewhat to share, but they need to talk to somebody else. It's okay with seeing a professional. Your peers on social media won't always be able to help you. Like, y'all stop being afraid to go to the doctor.
Sometimes they'll be more hurtful. Not just your peers, but people in general.
Yeah.
and even with crying, that's just every therapist that you talk to will tell you, embrace your feelings.
Yeah.
Allow yourself
Tears are a release.
feelings. Allow yourself to be able to feel.
And guys especially, like, I don't want to cry. Guys
I'll
supposed
cry.
to
I
be
don't care about
strong.
crying. But you know what it is? I think I don't even know what it is, but like the last year, I just learned to let go. Like nothing seems to bother me anymore. Even like people would cut me off while I'm driving. I would get mad. Now it doesn't. Go ahead. Like nothing bothers me no more.
Goddamn lie.
I swear.
Remember, let
these
a cop pull and be over outside.
This guy is such a piece of full of
even
shit.
Jesus and Mero, even Jesus and Mero, I'm doing a game with them in the
Who
next
said
couple of
anything
weeks.
about that?
That was
Charlamagne just said
February,
that.
though.
But I don't,
He said the whole last year.
no, I said in the whole year, nothing bothers me
this
anymore.
year.
Yeah, nothing.
You know
bothers
what?
me.
You know what made that situation worse though was social media. I would say that made it a lot worse. Just people weighing in.
Well, social media makes a lot of things worse. But even like I got a game with them that in I think 2 weeks, like nothing bothers me.
You want to
I
take a
just-
picture together?
Don't you foul
I
out.
don't care. If they want to, we can.
That's dope.
Nothing bothers
So
me
if a
anymore.
cop pulls you
Like,
over for no reason outside right now and gives you a ticket,
I'm gonna give him a piece of my mind, but it's not gonna sit with me throughout the day.
Which
where I'm
piece?
like, hey, freaking not. It
I
just-
want you to hug Jesus and Meryl when you see them. I want all y'all to hug each other and say, I love you, I value you, I appreciate you.
he ain't doing that.
Hug Meryl, that's your Dominican brother. Jesus, a black
I'm
man.
not
Hug each
Dominican, I'm
other,
black,
love each
but go
other.
ahead. I don't mind if you didn't threaten my family, hurt my kids. Life is too short. Like I'm
Word.
living a great life. I got 5 kids, a beautiful wife. My mother's alive. My father's alive. It's
right.
nothing to be mad at.
That's
It's
a
like,
blessing.
everything is happy. I'm living my dream. So it's like, why be mad? It's just.
And see,
There's
I'm
nothing
mad
bothering
right
me.
that a
now.
plug for
I'm
the
in the
car
grief
show?
stage of being
I didn't say nothing about the car show yet.
Living my dreams.
No, I'm living my dreams. It's like nothing
Could you
bothers
do
me.
it? Let him do it. Makes him happy, please.
Do y'all ever go
Jesus.
to do meditation? Any of you
Yes,
guys?
I do every morning.
Meditation is great. That's another way. It's a good, a healthy coping mechanism when you're dealing with stress or
I
grief
can
or
only do
anything.
like 3 minutes at a time.
That's
but that's
fine, though.
okay.
Okay, I try and then I'm like, okay, what I got to do?
Your mind starts wandering,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I was that way too. Because my name means peace in India, and I went to India for the first time in November, and it was the first time that I kind of felt like I was at one with my dad, and I gave up being angry at him. I wasn't mad at him for taking his own life, and I finally found peace in his culture. And so I was like, I really need to start embracing, the meditation. And there's some really good breathing exercises too. If you're driving and somebody cuts you off, or you're in class and you're stressed out, you can breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and exhale for 8. So it's called the 4-4-8.
Okay.
And it's a technique that they use. And I find myself using that all the time and just trying to incorporate different things around peace in my name. And there's also a great app called Headspace. And it's cool. It'll send you little notifications like get some headspace, meaning, stop and breathe and so forth. So I just want to make sure people are equipped with the tools of learning how to control, your emotions and dealing with your stress and anxiety. Everybody might not have a serious mental illness, but that does not mean that you won't deal with other things that could trigger it. Because people be like, I don't really know a lot about that mental illness. That mental illness, we all got it. Just like you have physical health, you have mental health. It's not some foreign thing that's out in another land or country. Like, learn your body, learn your emotions. Your brain is your biggest organ in your body, right? And that controls all of your, your sensory and your emotions. And so understand how you can control that and try to find that Zen-like place in your life every day. Also, you know how we all use Google Calendar, and you got to tape the Breakfast Club, and you got a lunch meeting, you got to meet with your publisher, you got to meet with your person. Schedule a meeting with yourself.
Damn right.
4 o'clock, I'm going to take a walk. No matter what. There's a great park in my neighborhood that I love. So I set a meeting with me, because some people only work off of their schedule. So you need to start setting up meetings with yourself.
Right. Well, I'm glad you gave us a lot of tools for people who are listening to use,
thank you for
because
joining us.
some people are very nervous about trying to approach this. Some people know other people who might really need some help but aren't going to do that. So you told us about a lot of different places. So let's just run that down one last time. So if you know somebody, some people feel like it's expensive and they don't know where to start or how to even go about it, so they get intimidated.
Yep. So start again. You can go to NAMI.org if you need to find a therapist in your area. You can text the word you can text the word silence to 741-741 if you're in crisis. You can reach out to mentalhealthamerica.net. You can reach out. You can go into therapyforblackgirls.com, log on and listen to our podcast. We have a 23 episodes up now that you can listen to that teaches you everything. If you want to meditate, download the app Headspace. It's amazing. There is online therapy available as well. A lot of people don't know that. You can just Google online therapy, but they'll have like 30-minute sessions. And sometimes that's a good place for people to start if they're afraid to actually talk to someone in person. It's just so many resources out there. And follow us on Instagram. We post a lot of helpful information. It's at Silence the Shame. And on Facebook, it's at Silence TH Shame. And even on our YouTube page, like we posted a panel we did last year with the singer Carrie Hilson, and it's still helping people to this day. Because, to see people opening up, we're going to be posting the one that you were just on with us, Charlamagne, the soundtrack of mental health. It's so many resources out there. And hit me, at Shanti Das 404. I do return all of my messages. I can't tell you how many people slide into my DM on a professional way, but, just asking me about mental health. And like you said, being afraid to talk. And, I'm just here to help. And I used to feel like it wasn't one legacy, and it was Frida Vision that told me, like, it's still my same legacy, Shanti Das from the music industry. I'm just doing, something different now to empower people in another way. And I'm 100% committed to try to help people be the best that they can be.
And once again, May 4th and May 5th.
Yes, May 4th is the Texathon. We're doing it in Atlanta at the Gathering Spot. Shout out to the Gathering Spot from 10 to 3. But everybody can text. You text the word silence to 707-070, or you can click on our website, www.silencetheshame.com. We have a lot of influencers that are going to be posting. We hope you guys will post and share on your social media, and not your Insta stories, because we can't track it as a foundation. So please consider posting on your actual Instagram feed. But join us this weekend as we celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month and getting people to be okay with not being okay.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Shanti Das. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.